was Sybil Teague. She was a widow, and my brother's research had shown that she had inherited a great deal of the town of Sarn. Beside her was another man, Terence Vale, who had a round face, scantily topped with thin, no-color hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and one of those stick-on name tags. He'd come from a city council open house, he'd said when he bustled in. His stick-on tag read, "Hi, I'm Terry, the mayor." Since Mayor Vale and Sheriff Branscombe were so put out by my presence, I figured I'd been summoned by Edwards or Teague. I swiveled my gaze from one to the other. Teague, I decided. I crossed my legs and slumped down in the uncomfortable chair. I swung my free foot, watching the toe of my black leather loafer get closer and closer to the front of the sheriff's desk. They were shooting accusations back and forth, like I wasn't in the room. I wondered if Tolliver could hear them from the waiting room. "You all want to hash this out while we go back to the hotel?" I asked, cutting through the arguments. They all stopped and looked at me. "I think we brought you here under the wrong impression," Branscombe said. His voice sounded as though he were trying to be courteous, but his face looked like he wanted me the hell away. His hands were clenched on the top of his desk. "And that wrong impression was?" I rubbed my eyes. I'd come directly from another site, and I was tired. "Terry here misled us somewhat as to your credentials." "Okay, you all decide while I get me some sleep," I said, abruptly giving up. I pulled myself to my feet, feeling as old as the hills, or at least far older than my actual age of 24. "There's another job waiting for me in Ashdown. I'd just as soon leave here early in the morning. You'll owe us travel money, at the least. We drove here from Tulsa. Ask my brother how much that'll be." Without waiting for anyone to speak, I left Harvey Branscombe's office and went down a corridor and through a door into the reception area. I ignored the dispatcher behind the desk, though she was looking at me curiously. No doubt she'd been aiming the same curiosity at Tolliver until I'd redirected her attention. Tolliver tossed down the aged magazine he'd been rifling through. He pushed himself up from the fake leather chair. Tolliver's 27. His mustache has a reddish cast. Otherwise, his hair is as black as mine. "Ready?" he asked. He could tell I was exasperated. He looked down at me, his eyebrows raised questioningly. Tolliver's at least 4 inches above my 5'7". I shook my head to tell him I'd fill him in later. He held open the glass door for me. We went out into the chilly night. I felt the cold in my bones. The seat on the Malibu was adjusted for my legs, since I'd driven last, so I slid back behind the wheel. The police department was on one side of the town square, facing the courthouse, which stood in the center. The courthouse was a massive building, erected during the 20s, the kind of edifice that would feature marble and high vaulted ceilings, impossible to heat or cool to modern standards, but impressive nonetheless. The grounds around the old building were beautifully kept, even now that all the foliage was dying back. There were still tourists parked in the premium town square parking spots. This time of year, Sarn's visitors were middle-aged to old white people, with rubber-soled shoes and windbreakers. They walked slowly and carefully, and curbs required negotiation. They tended to drive exactly the same way. We had to navigate around the square twice before I could get in the correct lane to go east to the motel. I had a feeling that all roads in Sarn led to the square. The stores on the square and those immediately off of it were the dressed-up part of the town, the part primed for public consumption. Even the streetlights were picturesque. Curving lines of metal painted a dull green and decorated with curlicues and leaves. The sidewalks were smooth and wheelchair accessible, and there were plenty of